Hi, and welcome to the SP podcast. In this episode, we are speaking to Lewis Woodham, a sports branding specialist who helps coaches, clubs, and governing bodies build their brand and engage with their audience. During this episode, we discuss the power of branding in sport, standing out in a crowded market, and how parents can utilize social media to find the best sporting setup for their child. I hope you enjoy. I think a great place to start would be, for those who don't know, what is a design agency?
So a design agency works in a couple of ways. I mean, for specifically what we do in sport, it's about, so we work with national governing bodies all the way down to sort of grassroots, sports clubs, coaches, really all levels of the game. And a design agency covers a lot of things, but ultimately what it does is it helps people and businesses and clubs and coaches to better understand their brand, uncover what their brand is, even understand what a brand is, generally speaking, helping them to sort of feel a bit more empowered when it comes to digital marketing. We assist them with design. We basically make what they do look really pretty, and give them the tools they need to sort of thrive online. Essentially, it's quite common in sport that so much is done on the pitch, on the court. That's where all the effort is placed, but often the digital side, the branding side, kind of gets left behind, because so much focus is spent on the sport itself. So we kind of work with, like I said, throughout sport, top to bottom, to sort of help catch up that other bit and make sure it matches the same level of passion and perfection that they have on the pitch or on the court, off the court.
It's interesting. And out of interest, why did you choose kind of the sporting industry and coaches and teams as your area of main focus? What was your kind of logic behind that?
Yeah, so I've got a long history in sport. Competed at a young age. I wasn't able to take it to the very top of the game. I've had a disability in my life, which means really seeing the sort of transformative power of sport. I've seen it firsthand. It's had a transformative effect on me. So sport has always been something I've wanted to do. Naturally, design has been my area of expertise. I sketched and painted from a very young age, and illustration was where I thought I was going to go. And naturally, that sort of the two worlds combined when it came to sort of sport and design, and I saw an opportunity to really, I suppose, help the sports industry. At the very top of the game, the top of the professional level, it's well covered. The Grand Slams, the World Cups, the Premier League, so much money is pumped into sort of the design element, the brand element, but sort of everything underneath that was a bit left behind. Like I said, people's focus was perhaps, elsewhere, focus and budgets and things like that. So I always wanted to work in sport, as I said, having been involved my whole life, and it just seemed the natural next step to take my expertise in design and apply it to sport. And whether it's tennis or football, it's hockey, a lot of the same problems exist, all of them, even from governing body level down. So it's something we're really passionate about. And as I say, that sports transformative power is just incredible. What it can do for kids and adults and getting people active, it's just phenomenal. It's a huge part of society, and we absolutely love working in it. It's different every day, and we love it. So that's why we kind of found ourselves working in sport.
Yeah, I think it's really useful. As I say, we're both in the same position where we didn't exactly make it to the professional level, but we love working kind of in the field and working with athletes. Mm-hmm. But I think you touched on an important point there, where if you're a coach or you're working in sport, you have all these qualifications and all these kind of training courses, but you don't really ever get taught how to put your message out online. It's learning how to deliver an on-court session or an on-the-pitch session. So I think that's a really powerful topic in terms of helping coaches really get their message out online. It's such a competitive space, but it's a tough area to really break into and kind of present your message to the world, really, in a kind of clear, cohesive way.
Yeah, it is. It's tough. And, and these guys, a lot of these coaches, whether it is S&C or it is, a tennis coach or it's a football coach, all of their emphasis, as I say, their passion is sport, their passion is coaching and helping people improve. these guys, you can't expect these guys to have the understanding of digital marketing. You just can't expect it. Their focus is the coaching and being the best they can at that. And a lot of these guys are running their own business, and naturally in sport, people are always much more aware of budgets. They've got to be very careful with any expenditure. Often within clubs, it's memberships money. If it's a coach, they've got to think about, well, okay, well, we're paying X amount of coaches. There's a lot of complications, and often that area of the budget kind of always gets ignored. And I think historically, the assumption is, that side, my brand, that marketing is expensive. I think that's just the immediate assumption. So a lot of these coaches park it. They don't bother with it, because to be fair, a lot of these guys have arguably never needed it. They've thrived through their their passion on court, their talent with coaching, their reputation, the word of mouth. They've thrived. But as the digital world has increased and grow year on year, and it's obviously an exponential growth now. Actually, as you say, Tom, the competition is hotter than ever. They're not just competing now with people within their sport, they're competing against other sports constantly. These kids have an opportunity at any point to go to cricket, to tennis, to football, and they've got to try and grab their attention and keep them within their sport. And especially for traditional sports like tennis and like golf, they don't perhaps get as much, I suppose, of the spotlight as football. Because so much money is pumped into the publicity around society. So, they've got an uphill battle sometimes as to getting people into the sport, which is why that sort of digital presence, that acknowledgement of branding, I think now is more important than ever. Absolutely.
No, I 100% agree. So touching upon that point, quick example, let's say you're a tennis coach, you've started out in the field, you've done your qualifications, you've taken over, let's say, a tennis club, or you're starting your small business. What would be your first step when it came to kind of trying to start an online presence? Obviously, you're starting from zero, you haven't got a big following, you haven't got kind of necessarily a huge reputation where you get instant followers. What would be your approach for like that stage one to really kind of move forward and start the process?
So I think whether it's sort of the two slight avenues, the digital marketing element and then the brand element, I would say both of those sort of treated slightly differently, but ultimately what they come back to is finding, or really trying to understand as early as you can, who you are. If it was a business or a brand, you try and break that down into really what are your values. What do they stand for? And those can be internally facing or they can be externally facing. Some brand values they're never shared, they're only just for personal reference. Others are, people tell the world about those values, and they could be anything. Those brand values could be inclusivity, they could be performance, they could be ruthlessness, they could be whatever you want them to be, but ultimately they just need to reflect you and who you want to be. And you may not necessarily want to align yourself with your brand. Whatever you decide, ultimately, as long as you try and get that nailed as early as you can, everything then flows, because from that you can then start to develop your tone of voice, which is the way you speak, or the way your business speaks. What a lot of coaches have to remember is, if I were to sit down with a coach like this and chat for an hour about their business, I'm sure they'd really sell it to me great. They'd be like, yeah, this is why we're amazing, and I'd be sold. But the thing is, not everyone's going to get a chance to sit over a coffee for an hour with these coaches to sell their business. People make, I think the average now attention span is, I think I read 8.3 seconds. So people are making snapshot decisions on their business and they don't even know about it. If they see a flyer, if they see a business card, if they see something on Instagram, they need to get the same emotions as they would as if they were having an hour-long chat. So getting those values done early on, I think, is really important, because that just sets the tone for everything. And then going beyond that, it's consistency. That's what I would say to any coach. There's not necessarily a right or wrong. I mean, there's routes that are better than others, but there's not massively a right or wrong. When you're being consistent, that's the most important thing. Consistency in your messaging, consistency in your output from a marketing perspective, consistency in your your image as a brand. If you're starting to, on your flyers, on your leaflets, if you're making a few jokes, if you're, nice doing, warm and welcoming headlines, well, great, we'll follow that through. Then obviously your tone of voice is going to be a lot friendlier, approachable. Great, follow that through to your Instagram, follow that through to any adverts you do. And then that consistency, that's how you start to really bed down your brand. Like I say, there's no right or wrong with it, but the inconsistency is what can be quite damaging. People don't know what to expect. Well, you posted 5 times last week and nothing for 2 weeks. So what am I expecting here? This headline is very serious, all about performance, and then this flyer you're laughing and joking about holiday camp. So kind of people don't quite know what to expect, and when they don't know what to expect, they find it a little bit harder to buy into it. So I suppose the long answer to what your question is I would say getting those values right, just understanding who you are is a massive step, and then trying to be as consistent as you can as you go forward at the start, I would say.
No, I agree. I think, especially we use tennis as an example again, but I think it's a good one where you can easily have a coach who posts something about performance, trying to attract, top 10 national junior to come and work with them. And the next week they're trying to sell fun holiday camps. And as a consumer, you're looking at it and going, actually, what's this person's speciality? What's this person good at? And I think, like you say, sometimes it's worth just kind of doubling down and being like, what is my brand, or what am I focusing on? What am I best at? And then directing it around that message, right? If you are an exceptional coach for TOTS tennis or for junior tennis at the beginner level, then great. In the same breath, if you're a WTA tour coach, your messaging's different, but doesn't mean your skill level's different. It's to do with who you're focusing towards and what kind of market you're trying to kind of gain traction in, really.
Exactly. And completely. And who your audience is may even be different to who you want your audience to be. You may be focusing on TOTS tennis, and actually you really kind of want to move in the performance direction. You say, okay, well then, that messaging, that your brand, you want to try and align yourself with who you want it to be, so performance. So as you say, that mixed messaging is only going to have really kind of negative sort of effects. And I think as well, it's okay, even if you don't know what you want to specialize in, you just want to do something in tennis or something in football or something in hockey or whatever, that's also okay. In which case, try not to specialize in anything. If you may change your mind as time goes on, if I don't know where I want to be, well then try and stay as neutral as you kind of can. So then those brand foundations that you're making, you're not committing to anything, so that when you want to pivot to performance in 2 years' time, you're not having to rework. You're not having to have a parent say, well, I thought you were all about the fun enjoyment. Now you're really serious about performance. That's a change. And that can be sometimes difficult. You're unpicking the hard work you've done. So as well, like I said, it's okay if you don't even know which one you want to be, in which case try and be consistent, but just not necessarily, pin yourself into a certain route. It's just trying to be clear, what direction or if any direction at all is helpful.
Yeah. And I think that, everyone's always on this mission to kind of go viral or kind of get huge traction really, really fast. But in reality, it's going to take time. People don't see necessarily one post and immediately go, oh, we're going to follow this account. It's consistency. It's kind of, what am I getting from subscribing to this person or following this platform? Whatever it is, you're not going to have one post where everyone goes, I'm fully bought in on this coach or this team or this area of sport. So linking into that, everyone's always off on a mission to try and, let me say, go viral in terms of trying to get that winning post. But, when it comes to posting, there's so many mistakes people make, in terms of Instagram as an example. What do you think is the most common area people make mistakes on in terms of kind of content posting and chasing that virality?
Yeah, I think, as you say, that it's a real hot topic. I think even in the speed social media has changed over the last couple of years, it's almost impossible now to really get that quick traction, and it's very unpredictable as well. So in terms of common mistakes, I think the common mistakes is putting too much pressure on themselves too quickly. I mean, that I hear it all the time from coaches, and it makes me, it sort of fills me with fear a little bit, because I'm like, if you're immediately obsessed with followers or anything like that, it's not going to go well for you, because yes, you want to keep an eye on your metrics and things like that, but you've got to be in it for the long game. You're talking consistent posting for months and months, and years, ultimately for that sort of long-term growth. And I think that's the biggest mistake I see all the time, is people putting too much pressure on themselves. If a post didn't get a like, it didn't get enough likes, I think, crikey, you've got to be in it for the long haul. You've got to be giving value with your content. That's what people want now. Value and ultimately personality. Those are the two things now which are by far the most successful when it comes to social media. It's, as you say, Tom, there are a million voices out there on social media. Why would they follow you? And that's an honest question. People say, well, and I've said it to people, why would they? And they go, oh, well, yeah, true, because I want them to. Well, that's not enough. They've got a million choices. And the way the social media algorithms work is, long gone is the day where it's just chronologically based. They will put content in front of you that they feel you would like. So, if you're wanting people to see what you're doing and what you're saying, well, then you need to be using those platforms. And what people have to remember is, these social media platforms pay millions and millions of pounds to the smartest brains in the world to try and create these algorithms as perfectly as possible. And you're a small part in that, and you're kind of slipping into what they're doing, which is why taking that pressure off yourself is what I would always recommend. Is just find a rhythm that you can stick with. Don't go crazy going 7 days a week and then nothing. That's worse. If you can sustain 2 days a week, that's fine. If you can sustain one, okay, do that. Just as long as it's consistent, it's that you can really thread together 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month, 5, 6 months of consistency. That's good. The platforms like it. Your followers know what to expect, and that's when you'll start to see the growth. And also, as I said, that personality element is also very big now. Seeing faces, seeing people enjoying themselves, seeing that kind of helpful content, firsthand, seeing people hitting the shots, people, the actual personalities now is a huge element. So, as much as you can as that, that kind of the rougher, more raw behind the scenes footage is always doing very well. So I suppose to answer your question, the common mistakes, I would say that the number one is definitely putting too much pressure on themselves, expecting results within a matter of weeks and months. And unfortunately, that's just not the case.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know what the exact number is, but you used to London as an example, and we said, tennis coach pages in London, there'd be thousands, of people saying roughly the same thing with a similar message, good information on technique or tactics or whatever. But then what makes you an account people want to follow? It's not just a case of, if they know you, great, they'll follow you, if they're members of your club or a client. But what separates you from the 10 other coaches who are in 5-mile radius of where you're based? Because it's not even on geographical necessarily. It's, if you're competing just in that space, when it comes to a worldwide arena of Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever platform you're using, you're competing against potentially, 100,000 different people and different accounts. So, it's not easy, and you're not going to win straight away. It's a case of, keeping it going and keeping it consistent. But I think, following on from that, we said earlier about a lot of people who work in sport, be it a local club who have, a voluntary basis in terms of their committee or a coaching business of 1 or 2 coaches, they may feel it's a bit, daunting, where they've got Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, all these different platforms they could use. In terms of bang for their buck, if you had time, let's say, to post a couple of days a week on one platform, where would you say you'd start, do you think?
It's a good question. And yeah, as you say, there's so many more options now, because even, the main ones that were always there, it was historically Twitter, Instagram, Facebook was kind of the big three, and that's all now shifted. Twitter obviously now being X, which has completely sort of changed. You've now got the introduction of YouTube and TikTok as much more, used social media platforms. So to answer your question, I would say what it boils down to again is the consistency, what you can sustain. And I would always say, remember, especially if we're talking to clubs and coaches, they've got limited time, limited workforce. They're always going to be stretched. It's always going to be that thing they try and remember to do, right?
Yeah.
So therefore, picking a platform which makes your life as easy as possible is what I would recommend. So posting on Facebook and Instagram, no brainer, because they're the same company, right? They're both Meta, so they're the both same company. You can post the two at the same time, easy peasy. The same captions, the same graphic, or the same photo. That's a no-brainer. The two of those, and they both cover two demographics. Obviously, it's been said a million times, but Facebook generally is that older demographic. Instagram now is kind of in the middle, does a bit of everything, and then obviously your newer platforms, your TikToks and things like that is obviously much younger. But I think I would say Facebook, Instagram, definitely, and things like Twitter or X, possibly. There's no harm in it. It's much less used platform now, so I wouldn't spend too much time focusing on it too much, because again, you've got to limit your character limit, so there's a bit of extra effort there, and remember, you want to try and cut that effort down. The third platform that I recommend to people, and it's not for everyone, is LinkedIn, which is massively on the rise in terms of usage. Again, you can use the same kind of content, the same caption and the same graphics and photos also work on LinkedIn. Obviously, it sort of appeals to a slightly different demographic. It is, that sort of more professional, but it hits a different area, which is good. And again, you're minimizing your effort because you can very much repurpose the same thing. The caution I would give to certain platforms, I would give caution to TikTok. I would give caution to YouTube. They're great platforms in their own right, but very, very difficult to sustain that. It's very hard. YouTube obviously is a lot of long form content. That's hard. That needs a full plan. Once in a blue moon, it's probably not worth doing. TikTok as well, great on the surface of it. Yes, high usage, high views, but it's all about speed, frequency, all the time. You've got to be really, really on it with TikTok. So again, I would say, is that suitable for a club and a coach whose time is very, very stretched? I would argue probably not. Yeah. So I would say, if someone were to ask me which platforms should I use, I would say Facebook, Instagram, definitely. And I would say definitely consider LinkedIn, and, still consider Twitter and X, because there's still quite high usage in terms of the sports world. But there's a lot of choice out there. But again, I would say, regardless, there's really no right or wrong, to be honest. They are all good in their own right. But consistency is everything, and you've just got to pick the platform which you think you can sustain. And I think that's the one takeaway I would give for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think also to some level it's what content you like making. If you're someone who films a lot of their sessions, if you're a coach who gets a lot of footage and a lot of game film, then great. If you're someone who likes writing, then platforms like LinkedIn and stuff are going to appeal to you more. If you struggle with things like video editing, it's not the easiest skill in the world, then avoid platforms like YouTube, where you've got a lot of people with very strong editing skills that you're competing against. Compared to, like, say, Instagram, you can take a photo of whatever you're doing, quick caption, send it out. I think that's an important area for people to consider. What skill set do you have where you can kind of stand out? Are you a great writer? Are you a good video editor? Do you have an opportunity to take great photos? If you're a tennis club, for example, with great aesthetics, you've got a great backdrop, you've got a lovely set of courts, all this kind of stuff. The photos all look great on an Instagram platform. However, if you're a coach who, for example, coaches only junior athletes and you can't take photos and put them online, then you're looking more towards like written content or something like that, or video content where you're speaking to the camera. So I think, like you say, it's finding the one which is right for your time, your skill set, and what's available.
And as you rightly point out there, that skill set also ties perfectly in with consistency, right? Because if you are, as you say, Tom, if you're a keen writer or a keen photographer or any of that, it's probably going to be quite enjoyable, right? You're going to kind of want to do it. Whereas if you are pretty rubbish at editing, which is, it's a difficult skill, and if that kind of stresses you out, don't touch YouTube, because that's a huge part of it. And are you going to consistently sustain output when you don't even enjoy it? Probably not. And therefore you're already, you're already taking a backward step before you've even started. So yeah, I agree with you completely. Finding that what you enjoy, tying it in with them being able to consistently keep it up is everything. Is everything.
Yeah. Well, even with my personal content, I will write every single day, no problem. I'll write some content and put it out. When it comes to video editing, I'm in a luxury position where I can hand it over to my video editor and it gets sorted for me. But I wouldn't necessarily allocate the same time to learning that skill set. The only reason we're on this podcast today is because I can outsource. I'm in a position where I can outsource the editing side of things. But if you're a small setup and you have to do it all yourself, you don't want to take on projects where you have to spend 50 hours learning a software and kind of really researching how things work, because that's time you could be spent on the pitch, on the court, things like that, where you could really be moving your business forward in that way. So it's like you say, time allocation, really. One question I have for you, which I think would interest some of the listeners, is if you're a parent looking for a coach, like we said, there's thousands of options out there. Again, we use the example of a tennis player, right? You've got a tennis player they're keen, they're a junior player, and they want to take their tennis to the next level. They're looking for a coach. What would you say is a good way to look for a coach online? So let's say you haven't got a prior knowledge or prior, relationship with a coach where you naturally fall into their programming. You're purely going off looking online and looking on social media. What would you look for, in a coach or club or a team?
I think any coach or club who, let's say, from their digital marketing efforts, let's say they have put a lot of time and effort into it. And I think that's quite clear to see when it comes to websites and social media and things like that. I would say anyone who has gone to that effort of really developing that side of the business, I think is definitely a positive sign, 100%. And I think if they were to come across a coach who, as I say, has quite a strong presence, then I think that says a lot about the business. It says they're willing to adapt, to grow. They take their image quite seriously when it comes to the business. So those are all really good signs. It doesn't mean to say that a coach who doesn't have that, doesn't have the same level of or positives associated with them. Absolutely not. But I think if I was looking for a club or a coach, I think finding one who feels, or their brand is kind of clear quite early on, I think is something which is always going to be a good thing. So as I say, a coach or a club who clearly have an emphasis on inclusivity, clearly have an emphasis on participation, right? If you've got a child and you don't expect them to be a top superstar, nor do they want to be a top superstar. Well, you want to be looking for clubs who try and embody that sort of element of participation. They say, no, it's all about enjoyment, fun. And that's when your child, if you're a parent, that's where your child is going to enjoy that sport the most. If they're clearly leaning towards that performance element, then, a club or a coach who knows who they are when it comes to performance is a lot more aligned. So I think it's similar to, just to probably what you would do anyway when it comes to searching, is try and find one that kind of knows who they are, and their brand is perhaps clear when you're sort of doing your initial research. That's what I would say. But then again, that's not to say there are some amazing coaches and clubs out there who have done amazing work, who have kind of haven't put much time into their marketing or or brand, there are still some fantastic ones out there. So, but that would just be my advice, looking at it sort of from the outside.
No, I agree, and I think going back to what we said before, it's if you have that constant kind of message which you portray in your content, then a parent knows what to expect. If you're a club or a coach who focuses on fun and engagement, you can see why it's fun and engaging. They got content around what they actually do. In the same way, if you're a top performance coach, what ethos and what kind of attitude do you have to performance? What do your sessions look like? What are you doing with the athletes to make them go from good to great? It's really good to have that layer of content, to have an insight into what you're going to buy. If you're going to go spend money on anything, you want to kind of have an idea of what you're going to get. So social media has that bit of a preview element to it, where you get to have a little insight to what you're going to get.
Absolutely. It's that window in, as you say, and especially now with a lot of parents, they probably they'll either stumble across, a club or a coach on social media, or they may even search for, clubs near me, or, coaches near me on Google Maps. They'll probably do that, which is where the sort of SEO element comes in, which I know is a slightly different avenue. But, I think immediately giving that impression, with people's attention span being so small, making snapshot decisions all the time, you want to make sure that first impression to that parent is that impression that really captures who you are as a business. As I say, whether that's participate, whatever it is, there's no right or wrong, whatever it is, you want to make sure they get that impression straight away. And then, these parents, when they're searching and they're finding, they'll get that good feeling straight away. If you're all about fun and participation, they want to come across a kid smiling or a kid throwing the ball and he's loving it. He's laughing and joking with his friends, and a parent will immediately go, yeah, that's it. That's my little boy. Or if you're much more performance related, then, and they see someone, a kid ripping a backhand down the line, great. Okay. They'll get that snapshot decision, because, as we've spoken about on social media, you're up against a lot of other voices. So getting that impression out very quickly is important.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think one final question for you is, obviously you're someone who's built a successful business in the world of sport, and a question I get from a lot of people in this industry, especially the younger people first breaking into this space, is they ask, what can I do to kind of thrive and kind of develop my business in the world of sport or performance or whatever it is they're trying to do. So if you could go back and speak to yourself as a kind of early on business owner, you've just started out in this space, having learned what you've learned now, what would you give yourself as a piece of advice to kind of help you on the journey kind of in this kind of competitive arena?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I think what I would probably do is I think early on I was quite guilty of wanting this kind of perfect route, which I sort of saw. I saw this perfect route and how I wanted to get there. And, I didn't, at the time early on, I didn't perhaps take advantage of certain opportunities because it wasn't exactly in line with this perfect route I had, and I think as the years have gone on, I think as long as you're moving forward, I really do believe that is a positive step. And especially in the world of sport, people have so much to do. You've got so many things to consider as a business owner within sport, whether that's your coaching business or whatever, is that as long as you're taking forward steps, not beating yourself up about not being on this perfect path, because more often than not, as well, Tom, sport is such a small world. It is so small. Everyone knows everyone within your sport, and more often than not, the person knows someone within that other sport, and you could draw a map really easily across quite a few different sports, not even in this country, but across Europe and abroad. So I think as long as you're moving forward and not pinning yourself too much to that perfect path, take as many opportunities as you can. As long as you're taking those steps forward, putting that time and effort in, I really do believe, because sport is so unique, not like other industries, you will come across opportunities you hadn't even considered, opportunities to pivot which you hadn't even thought of before. And ultimately it will take you where you want to go. But I think definitely I would be much easier on myself about relaxing, considering other opportunities, and as long as I was moving forward, that's the right thing. And that's certainly the attitude I have now. I take all opportunities because I know it something will come of it for sure, and that's sort of been a change in attitude.
I think an interesting thing you said there was, sport's such a small world that if you were to take, let's say, we'll go back, use the example of tennis coach again. If your goal is to become a coach on the WTA tour, for example, it wouldn't take many degrees of separation for you to have a contact who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone of a WTA tour coach or player or someone in that space. So like you say, taking those opportunities to network and get to know people and kind of showcase your skills in whatever situation arises can quite quickly get you in a position where you can speak to someone or know someone or kind of be visible to someone in that space where they are at the point you're looking to go to, be that a massive club owner, be it a top tour player, whatever it is you want to speak to. It doesn't take that many connections in such a small area of this industry to get to that person, but you need to be out there and meeting people and networking and seizing opportunities, really.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think that's a fantastic point, because people within sport do really want to help, and people in sport like helping. I've noticed that we've worked with people at the very, very top of the game all the way down to that real grassroots level, and everyone's always willing to help. And I think, as you say, maximizing those connections. And the good thing about sport, whether it's regional level, your county level, governing body level, there's so many opportunities, webinars, forums. It's a big part of sport in this country and sport in other countries as well, where they want to promote that as much as they can. Networking, connection, best practice, and that's unlike other industries. There are other industries where it's cutthroat. You've got to find your own way. But in sport, you could literally, just through the goodwill of people, as you say, Tom, speak to someone who's at the peak of that direction you want to go in within probably 3 or 4 people. And that's something which I've done always in our business. I'm very passionate about it. Is just speak to people, be nice, be polite, be humble, and you'll find people willing to help 100%. I'm really passionate about that.
I think as industries go, the sporting industry as a whole anyway is full of people who are very happy to chat and help because they love their field. They want to talk tennis, they want to talk football, they want to talk coaching because it's their passion. It's not an industry where people are in it through purely finances, or purely because they've got a degree in that topic or whatever, like other industries. It's an area where people do it because they love it. There is money at the top of games, and also if you're someone who does thrive and build a big business, there's plenty of money to go around. But people start out in the space because they're passionate about tennis or football or cricket or whatever it is that they love, and they want to try and forge a career in it. So if you say to someone, like even me and you will happily sit and talk tennis for hours, even though none of us have competed in tennis for years and years and years. It's a passion of ours, and we want to talk about it. So it's very easy to sit down to have a very relaxed chat with someone who also shares the passion you have.
Completely agree.
But thank you for your time today. It's been a really interesting chat. Hopefully everyone who's listening has enjoyed. If people want to kind of follow you or get in touch with you about your business and your services, how can people find you online?
So best place is probably checking us out on LinkedIn, either me personally, Lewis Woodham, or heading to our company page, W&H Design, or our Instagram as well, at Woodham. We share a lot of the case studies we do, and because we do so much work in sport, often sharing the work that we do sparks good conversation. It sparks, collaboration as well between coaches and business within sports. So it's well worth a follow. And obviously, if anyone wants to chat with me directly about how we can help them, then I'd encourage them to do so. Even just having a chat's always good fun. Perfect.
And we'll put the link of your pages in the description of this video too. But no, thank you again for your time.
Pleasure.
It's been really interesting, and we'll speak again soon. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Before you go, I want to share a great resource for any coach, the SP Coaching Journal. It's designed to help any coach of any discipline or sport reflect on their sessions and maximise the improvement of their athletes. If you want to find out more about this resource, check out the link in the bio. Thanks again for watching and see you next time.